Hi everyone, and welcome back. Time for the final session of a jam-packed day. It's been really informative so far, and it's going to get even more so because I'm joined by KK, for Chief Data Officer from Farfetch, Erik Olson, VP Product Innovation at Crocs, Ganesh Subramanian, who is the founder and CEO of Stylumia, Simon Leesley, MD at Stitch Fix, and Mo Alomari from Royce, the AI Hub Lead. Hello everyone, how are you doing?
Very good.
Very good.
Fantastic. Good. Well, welcome to PI Apparel Spotlight on AI in fashion. Let's start with a few quick introductions. Simon, if I could start with you, please.
Yes, thank you. Happy to be here. My name is Simon Leesley. I'm the Managing Director of Stitch Fix in the UK. For those that don't know, Stitch Fix is the world leader in personal styling and a personalized shopping experience, where we have multiple experiences where a customer can have a stylist handpick items from them, leveraging data science and AI in that process, or they can trust Stitch Fix to deliver a personalized shopping experience that is more curated than what exists in e-commerce today. And so we have shipped $6 billion worth of clothing sight unseen to customers using personalization algorithms and human stylists.
Fantastic. Excellent. Ganesh, for those who didn't just watch your previous session, perhaps a very brief introduction for you as well.
Hi, everyone, and nice to be here. And great panel to be part of. I'm Ganesh Subramanian, founder and CEO of Stylumia from Bangalore, India. We are a deep tech startup. We enable, optimizing inventory through the entire value chain in any fashion brand or retailer by using AI algorithms right from consumer research right up to distribution. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ganesh. Mo, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Mo Alomari, and I lead the AI team for Rolls-Royce in the London office. I'm really excited to be here. So I'm obviously not from the fashion industry. So I work at Rolls-Royce, which is the power system company. We deliver everything from airplane engines to nuclear reactors across the globe. We have 50,000 employees, again, across the globe, 20,000 engineers. And I'm very much excited to learn more about what sort of AI is happening in the fashion space.
Yeah, should be really interesting. Great to have someone from outside the fashion industry here as well, I think. Erik, a brief introduction for yourself, please.
Hi, Erik Olson. I'm in Colorado. I represent the brand Crocs, global footwear brand. I work with a global team that provides everything from product development through sourcing of our product. And we make thousands of decisions every day that are either now enabled by AI or can be improved with artificial intelligence in the future.
Fantastic. Last but very much not least, KK, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm Kshitij Kumar. I go by KK just because it's a tough name to pronounce. I'm actually the Chief Data Officer at Farfetch UK. We are, for those who don't know us, we are the world's one of the biggest luxury fashion online retailers. We are listed on the NYSE, and we went public a couple of years ago. My job is to basically cover everything dealing with data. So I am on the executive board of the company. I am basically doing everything from marketing analytics to operational analytics to customer service analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, data governance, you name it. If we are doing anything in data, that pretty much falls in my team. Looking forward to this panel.
Yeah, well, welcome everyone, one and all. Let's get started. Also, actually, just before that, I just want to remind everyone to get involved in the chat, ask questions, leave some comments on any of the comments that people make here. Let's get interactive with this one. So, in light of last year's disruption, and even before that, the demise of the traditional fashion model, how important is it to be proactive rather than reactive? And how has and will AI help companies make this shift? Erik, I am going to start with you on that one, sir.
Well, thank you. Great panel. I'm real excited. Hopefully we can spark some good ideas here today. I love the cross-industry piece of it too as well. So I think that being proactive as opposed to reactive is always a desire of all business leaders, right? We want to be able to do that. So when I look at the future of artificial intelligence in the fashion industry and how we can be more reactive, certainly around things like forecasting and understanding what the consumer wants when, much like Ganesh just talked about earlier. Great job, Ganesh. I also think that there's ways that we can explore creativity with AI and how we can add more to the consumer value proposition in the future. So we're looking at all different angles, and I think some of the things that are obvious that AI helps with around the forecasting and that type of thing are some of the things that are secondary to the things that we're investigating with our supply chain.
Brilliant, thanks. Simon, the demise of the traditional fashion model, I guess, Stitch Fix has been on the rise of the new one, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I agree with a lot of what Erik just said, and we're focused in similar areas. I mean, one of the biggest ways that we've implemented AI in the business that's helped us be more proactive is on the demand forecasting side. So almost all of our demand is forecast by algorithms with very little human tweaking involved in that. Certainly this year, when you have black swan events like coronavirus, you have to involve humans a little bit more in that process. But that's one of the areas that we've really dialed in our ability to forecast the business through AI. And then I think the other place where it's really helpful in our business is we're trying, the days of long-term, planning, buying cycles are gone. Like, we need to have more continuous agile processing or forecasting in the business. And so we're trying to shorten the actual supply chain itself on top of getting more accurate with demand. And so using things like, our rebuy algorithms, which essentially recommends algorithmically to buyers when they should be placing additional orders of an item, or when they should consider it in different colors or prints. And then also trying to couple 3D design into that process to put things in front of customers before we ever manufacture them and get reads on those, where we can then algorithmically predict the depths and quantities at which we need to purchase them. So all of those are, really things that we're already in the pipeline, but we've really doubled down on this year given the current environment.
When you're predicting what clothes people should wear, Simon, tell me, how hard is it not to get too greedy with how many predictions you send people? And can the data work to give them even more predictions than perhaps you thought were necessary for that particular person?
I mean, fundamentally, what we're doing is we're using personalization to reduce the paradox of choice that customers face online today. And so our mantra is to put fewer things in front of the customer and leverage, a combination of data science and humans to pare down. We have tens of thousands of SKUs in our inventory, but when a stylist goes to pick 5 items for a client, they only see probably the most relevant 200, 250 for that specific client. And all that heavy lifting is done by the algorithms, so that you're not transferring the cognitive load from a human to a human in the customer to the stylist. And so even with our direct shopping feature, where clients can go on and see a highly curated e-commerce experience, they see far fewer items than you would in traditional e-commerce, but it's highly curated to them based on their style profile, their purchase history. Every bit of data that they've ever told us about themselves is used to curate that really tight experience for them.
Thanks. KK, I'd like to come to you next. The original question was about being more proactive than reactive, and I guess that's something that you guys do as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if you went back and read our prospectus when we were about to go public, we talked about 3 pillars 2 years ago, and the third pillar was data. We didn't have, the first one was our knowledge, fashion, etc. The second was technology. The third was data. And we didn't at that time have a CDO. I wasn't there. We didn't have one leader. We weren't actually doing those things at that time, but we knew what we needed to do. And so, we went out, I came on board, I built a team. Very, very luckily for us, most of that work was done in that fundamental leadership team was there. The fundamental data scientists across the company were all reporting into me. We had started working like one team just before COVID happened. And I must say, a shiver went up my spine when it happened. Apart from everything else, I thought, my goodness, are we going to be able to come together as a team and actually work remotely when nobody's going to see each other for who knows how long? And thank goodness, everything worked very, very well. So being prepared, not just from a technology perspective, but from a cultural perspective, being able to work remotely, we didn't skip a beat. In fact, what started happening is data became the way that we could actually see what was happening around the world, because we ship to 190 countries. We have hundreds of thousands of schools in the database. And so when you start seeing people from China beginning to come back again to the site and start to see certain things, your algorithms, the data models have all actually gone out the window when this kind of an event happens. But then the machine learning starts learning again and starts seeing what's happening. And when we started seeing people coming back again, the algorithms actually adapted quite well. We were able to start predicting, okay, if this is what's happening, here's what we should expect next. And so I think being prepared for these kinds of things, you can never be prepared for everything, but being in the cloud, making sure your AI, your ML, your data, your analytics, your governance is in place so that you can continue to work through, absolutely critical. And it's held us in good stead so far.
Fantastic. Let's move on because I think there's some really, really interesting stuff as well. So the next question is, in which parts of the value chain is AI a natural fit? And there must be some natural fits for it. And Mo, I think I'll come to you directly on that to maybe get an outside industry perspective on that.
Well, thank you. And first of all, it's kind of interesting to hear from Erik and Simon and KK how data scientists in different industries have been reacting almost in the same way to the rise of COVID-19. And to answer your questions, so there are plenty of basically use cases where AI fits naturally, and that is mainly around when you have decisions to be made, and there's huge amounts of data on the back of it that would aid in this decision. So humans are obviously really good at reasoning or connecting pieces of information, but what they are not naturally good at is digesting or reading lots of data. Just kind of a fun fact, as an activity, we sort of looked at the challenge, which is how long would it take a person to read all of Wikipedia, which is not a massive data set compared to the human knowledge out there. And it turns out it would take more than 170 years for a person to read Wikipedia. And again, in comparison, it took my laptop, which is not a fancy machine, less than 3 hours to go through every single character in Wikipedia. So that's kind of where AI fits naturally in use cases. In terms of how we have been utilizing AI in Rolls-Royce, again, in response for COVID-19, it's very similar, again, to Erik and Simon. It was around understanding the demand that we will have on our product. So the civil aviation industry, which Rolls-Royce is heavily involved in, have been disrupted severely, just like everyone else, I guess, in the world. We had more than $275 billion worth of losses in the sector, and more than 2.7 million flights canceled just in May alone. So that just give you a size in terms of how much we have been disrupted, and that meant that we had to adapt and react quickly. And the amounts of data that we were fed on a daily basis is absolutely enormous that no one team in Rolls-Royce could handle. And this is where our AI played a major role in sort of helping Rolls-Royce to overcome the financial challenges that we have seen over the past few months. And there's a lot to talk about there, more there in, if there is interest.
Yeah. What about you, Ganesh? What about natural fit? Where does it naturally fit in the supply chain or the value chain? Sorry, I mean, I guess you'd say design.
Yeah. So I think I agree. I agree with Mo in terms of where there is plenty of data and there is high level of complexity, and more it is unstructured, AI comes very handy, right? Just to give you a perspective, the size of the data that we handle. Let's say we handle retailers like Farfetch, hundreds and thousands of them. For our data size is a superset of hundreds and thousands of retailers, data points over a period of time, right? And when that's the level of data, now how do you make sense out of them, right? What's actually trending? Therefore, if I have to just split the value chain into few parts and say research, buy, plan, and sell, and that's what fashion actually does at a very high level. So it comes handy in consumer research, right? So that's one of the areas that we adopt and helped designers take informed decisions in terms of what kind of products to make. And I think Simon and others, Erik also talked about where do we take AI into, for example, the secondary spaces where in creation itself, right? So we showcased one of our solutions today about Imagine. What it does is it can actually create designs. Now, these inspirations are coming from face generation. Today, you can create a human face by mixing styles of two people, maybe your hairstyle and maybe my skin color and somebody else's complexion, right? Now, like using that, we are able to create now designs. And one of the key things in fashion is that we have a huge supply-demand gap. For prediction, it's demand forecasting is fundamental here. But the way we do very differently is we use image itself along with attributes to predict. We put pixels. Therefore, the number of parameters getting into the model is an order of magnitude exponential compared to attribute-based prediction models. For right from design research into prediction is where we use AI, and we have been AI native from day zero. And the point is that not just AI use AI for the sake of it. There are spaces that where we use traditional models, right? Everything need not be AI, but one needs to be choosy and say which helps the task get done better.
Would anyone else like to come in on that, sort of the sort of differences between different models and approaches? KK, perhaps.
Sure, I can always jump in. I think from looking at how wide our approach is, we're not just looking at the design or just the operations or just one part of it, right? So if you think about what Google does, right, with Google Analytics and things like that, or Microsoft, pick Bing, pick Facebook, pick whoever. When a customer, when a consumer is actually doing an online search to say, I want to buy I won't name brands, but pick your favorite brand and say, I want to buy something like that, or I'm looking for something like that for Black Friday, for Christmas. I'm looking for a gift for my girlfriend or my wife. That search, when that happens there, kicks off an entire artificial intelligence chain behind the scenes, right? Google first starts or Facebook first starts doing what they need to do. We, companies like us who are sitting behind watching what's happening, we look at it from a different perspective and say, hey, what this person is looking for, can we actually sell it to them? Especially in the COVID times when this happened right in the beginning, right? April, May, we were wondering, can you actually ship it to them? Even if they search for it from wherever they are, can we actually get it to them, even if it's available somewhere in the world, right? All of this behind the scenes is running with artificial intelligence. So from getting that customer to the product, wherever that product is, in our case, it's an online website. Then once they are on the website, what should we show them then? What do we want to show them that would be something that they would like, that would make them happy, but also something that's good for the environment, something that needs to be shipped across the world. If I can also ship something which is a few miles away from where this person is, which one do you want to focus on, right? So it's not just about the profit that the company would make, but how is it going to be for the earth, for the world, right? And other parameters like that. Then to the points that Ganesh was making earlier, what style, what do I actually show them? Is this something that that would suit them, make them happy? Are they going to be able to use it? Is it maybe something that won't even fit them, for instance, based on past behavior, etc. All the way down to the operations. Once the person has bought it, looking at fraud, for instance. You put in a credit card. How do you know that this person is real, legitimate, or not? And are they the owners of that credit card or not? Going on to when you ship it, how do you tell them you're going to get this on Wednesday between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. before they've even made the order? And you could be on the other side of the earth. Remember, you got to now predict customs when this is going to be shipped, not just airplanes picking up this stuff and delivering it, but also the customs guys in multiple countries possibly. So AI can be applied to many, many, many things, but the ones where we are seeing the easiest start, of course, is with things like customer service. When somebody picks up the phone and calls or goes online and starts trying to talk to them, chatbots, but not just chatbots. These are multimodal chatbots now. Are they looking at have they already done a search online? What did they look for then? What are they asking now? How can I look at it beyond just the one question that they're asking? What's the context around it? I think overall, AI can be applied wherever you've got complex data sets, data to train from the past, and where you're trying to do something that is predictable. Even if it's not predictable for us humans, we may not actually see that it's predictable, but the machines probably can.
Fantastic stuff. I mean, I think that'd be really, really interesting to know what some of your greatest successes with AI, because as you rightly said, KK, it covers so many areas and it can cover the entire value chain, really. Erik, maybe I could start with you on that. And what have been your sort of greatest successes in using AI?
Certainly, there's just as KK said. I think it's spot on. As the most mature pieces are around the marketing and making sure you get your return on investments when you're marketing and being more targeted. The security piece is another piece that we have longstanding success with, and then the customer service is really an interesting piece because, it's all about being more friendly to the consumer at the end of the day, and using that in conjunction with our staff and our people to be more proactive in the terms of when customer complaints are going to come and how we can attach those and then go from there. I think that's been three of the areas of success. And I think that, to the previous question, in terms of those are the most mature areas, and that's, where we started as well. I think every company is different, though. You have to look to where you have a data set and you have perhaps a team that's more inclined to want to use these tools to increase and compound their value to the company.
Brilliant. I saw a lot of heads nodding there. So, Simon, what would be some of your greatest examples of using AI?
Yeah, I'll highlight a couple of them. The biggest one is probably in our styling recommendation algorithms. So we have a engaging game that we allow clients to play or ask clients to play called Style Shuffle. And it's just a game where we show them in our mobile app just hundreds of images of clothes, like one at a time, and they rate yes or no on them. It's as simple as that. And that provides just an insane amount of data to train machine learning on. And so to give you a sense of the scale, we have over 3 billion ratings from our client base in that game. And so it allows us to do a lot of things across the business. First, it powers our latent style algorithms, which is the primary recommendation algorithm that when a stylist goes to style a client, it says out of the 40,000 styles that we have, these are the 250 most relevant for this specific client that you're styling. The second place is it allows us to do interesting things in the supply chain. So we can put product that we're thinking about designing or manufacturing into this Style Shuffle game and get clients to rate it. And it actually tells us at that point, okay, this is a winning style for a broad base of the customer segment of your customer base, or it might be for this super niche group. And from what we can do from there is then essentially recommend how deep we should buy that style, and then who to target it to when we actually bring in the product. And that's been hugely helpful for just reducing waste and clearance and markdowns in the overall supply chain, which is critical for fashion. So that's one big one. The other place we've had a lot of success is certainly on the marketing front and how we present things to customers. And so every interaction the customer has is it's personalized through AI. And so after a client checks out, as an example, where they give us feedback on the items, complete their purchase of what they want to keep and what they want to send back, we have the opportunity at that point to present the client with a lot of different things on the page, that shows up after it. And if It could be refer a friend if they've just had an amazing experience. If they've had, poor experience, we could, refer them directly into their stylist or customer service. And so every touch point we have is personalized in some way based on just these massive amounts of data that we have about where a customer is in their journey, what just happened. And those are things that humans just aren't good at doing, understanding all those interaction points of huge amounts of data. And so those are a couple of examples of how we've used it very successfully in the business.
Thanks, Simon. Mo, over to you. What have been some of your greatest success stories with AI at Rolls-Royce?
Yeah, well, thank you. And in terms of the greatest success over the past 2 years, we have been heavily involved with the digitization of our supply chain. I guess something worth commenting on is what Erik mentioned around you need a team that is also willing to go through the digitization or the use of AI journey with you as they, in parallel. You need the subject matter experts to be as keen or as motivated to use AI within the organization. Now, within our supply chain, it's a massively overcomplicated kind of setup that we have that delivers billions of pounds worth of components and equipment so that we can deliver the products that we do in Rolls-Royce, and it's spread across the entire globe. And the slightest change within the supply chain requires massive amounts of analyzing of data to understand the impact that it would have on all of our products. And what we've seen through COVID or the rise of COVID is that we had a huge risk in terms of not being able to fully understand the impact that would happen by, say, one of our supplier going into or declaring bankruptcy or going into administration, or simply not being able to operate because there are some restrictions within the country or the continent where they sit in. And mapping all of this, as well as creating lots of scenario modeling tools and build optimization algorithm on top of this scenario modeling tool, have been by far the biggest value driver for us within the AI team in terms of saving or cutting costs for Rolls-Royce. It was mostly directed around optimizing our supply chain and around simplifying our supply chain as well. So that kind of was the main application for us this year.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Ganesh, I want to come to you next as well and talk about how AI can be used to drive scale and reduce cost across sort of operations. So could you shed some light on that?
Yeah. Again, we are a B2B enabler. Our customers are brands and retailers. So one of the fundamental areas, is, let's say, research. Like if it's a private brand retailer, or if you are a retailer with multi-brand and you are spending a lot of time and energy in buying. So we cut down the research time by 75%. Therefore, 4x increase, reduction in research time. What that means is increase significantly time to market, right? You're not actually all the time wasting time in validation. So we quickly validate. Therefore, that's one, speed to market is going to be very critical. Second is whatever decisions you are taking, you need to take it right. So the area that we help and the metric which we move for our customers is basically full price sell through. So how much of your products are you selling through in the system, through the sellout in the system, whether you do through retail or through wholesale, how do you do that? And that's something that we shift anywhere between 20 to 30% shift in the full price sell through. And coming to the intensive operation space, which is the quantitative side of the business, we normally say, right, there's no bad product if you bought the right quantity, right? Therefore, it's very fundamental. And the question here is people miss the quantitative forecast, a lot of fashion in the qualitative side of it and quantitative side of prediction, getting the depth right and your width of options right is critical to getting the overall, and particularly in sustainability. Right now, there's so much of wastage, right? We have so far eliminated close to 60 million garments, and of course, we are growing and this will grow with us. How do we minimize that wastage? That's what we do in the buy optimization. In distribution, I think very interesting. And, what we have seen is, through COVID, our models are able to adapt very, very quickly, right? For example, let's say the offline stores have started to pick up slowly while the online was growing faster. And predicting a store in this dynamic environment was challenging. And what we could see, of course, the model did not work in the first few weeks. Within the third, fourth week, we could see that our models are adapting to COVID situation. And as the stores opened, it was correcting online demand also. We were getting, in the prediction terms, there is a terminology called mean absolute percentage error. We were able to get a MAPE of just 4 to 5%, which means that we are able to get demand accuracies through the COVID period close to 95%. Now, because of that, I think our clients start to get confidence, right? With COVID, people actually start getting very conservative. My demand will be very low. They were not placing enough bets. Once the accuracy started improving, they started placing bets, right? They started to believe the data. Now, today, the sales is increasing. So I think when we say prediction, it's actually conservative, effectiveness, all of that. What we are saying is prediction can actually completely magnify the business. It can be a revenue growth driver. It builds a lot of optimism in the decision makers. So that's what we see across the value chain and eventually resulting in sustainability.
Fantastic. I see a lot of nodding heads there as well. Guys, we've gone through half an hour already. It's flown by, but look, we've got another half an hour. We've got loads of questions coming in. So I'm going to get into them, and I guess I'll try and direct them to the appropriate person. But if anyone wants to come in on it, just either raise your hand or just jump in. So, right. AI is known for sending people down a rabbit hole of narrower and narrower focus. How do you prevent this and allow people to see new things and have people open to new options for purchase? I'm going to go with KK first and foremost.
Sure, I think that's a great question. Obviously, it's coming from somebody who's a practitioner because this is a real problem. We see it. It does happen. But I think the way that you have to avoid it really is by making sure that your data sets and what's going into making that decision is not the same old, and that there's also a feedback loop. So what you have to have is if you're actually sending people down into a narrower set of things, you're going to run out of those things. If it's, let's say, it's just a ranking algorithm. Let's talk about ranking, right? You search for genes on our website, you probably see 10,000 types of genes. Now, if we always keep recommending the same top 10 genes, then those are going to sell out right away, and you're never going to be able to satisfy everybody. It's not a positive experience for anybody. So what you have to do is a couple of things. One is obviously you have to make sure that you're getting a feedback. If you only have 10 of those genes and 5 of them have sold out because of what's happened in the last few days, then you have to know that you cannot recommend that again. So you have to first change it based on what's actually happening on the website. But the more important one, in our case, the website, the more important one, though, is to bring in other data sets to make sure that the decisions, the AI algorithm, the machine learning algorithms will only go towards the data that they're seeing because they're training themselves. They're learning from what you're giving it. So the way we avoid that is you have to make sure that you actually get a broader selection of data, not just, for instance, even data from your own website. What can you get externally? And how do you change that? How do you change some of the parameters in the model? You have to watch the model over time as well to see if it's deteriorating or not. There's lots of technologies and techniques out there for making sure that your model is not misperforming. But I'm happy to hear what some of the others are doing.
Yeah. Mo, would you like to come in on this? I think it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, thank you. And great points, KK. And also, yeah, great question. So for us, it's kind of a mixture of thoughts on this. The first one is obviously when you have safety critical systems, like some of the ones that we are building, you actually want your data scientists to be really deep into the understanding of the intricacies or the details of what's happening in your data, because some of the a lot of the results that will come from the AI system that we are building will impact the decisions being made. For example, one of our more mature programs is called EHM, or Engine Health Monitoring. It's been going on for 30 years. It's kind of the crown jewel of data analytics in Rolls-Royce. And we have hundreds of data scientists working on this for 30 years. And this is kind of one example where AI is delivering huge values in terms of distinguishing or creating a difference between the safety of the products from Rolls-Royce against our competitors. So it's seen as an advantage that you're actually becoming really knowledgeable within that one specific area. Now, obviously the counter argument, as KK kind of puts as well, is you're missing out on a lot of what other data sets or what other research is going on in other areas. If you become too involved in one sector or in one problem or using one algorithm, then you're missing out on a lot of exciting and also beneficial research happening within other areas. Just as an example, we, for example, now run, in terms of how do we mitigate this, we run bi-weekly sessions in Rolls-Royce, inviting all different data science groups within the company to talk about AI that is happening from outside of the engineering domain. For example, the bioinformatics or the pharmaceutical industry have been doing some really exciting research in terms of mining knowledge from millions of papers and patents and books to help design speed up the design of medicines, which obviously is very relevant now for us in the time of COVID-19. And the thought that we had is, how can we perhaps repurpose or borrow some of that thinking in terms of, can we use this system to help design better engineering systems for Rolls-Royce? So yeah, it's kind of, again, double-edged sword. You want your teams to be really good at what they do because it really matters that they're doing it, but also you don't want them to miss out on all the great stuff that are happening out there.
Yeah. Would anyone else like to come in on that, sort of how to avoid this rabbit hole scenario of narrower and narrower focus? I don't know, Erik, Ganesh, Simon, have you?
I think what Mo was describing there is getting different people to look at it, because it's really, it is a great question. It is both sides of the thing boiled down precisely, is that you have to edit to be precise, but then you also, I think when we think about this a lot in terms of Crocs, it's just the fact that I don't think any machine learning would have ever predicted a plastic injected clog being as big as it was. So we're looking at that. So it is about bringing it back to the people and letting people look into it and uncovering the biases that might be there. So as much as machine learning does for us, I think it's also important to include your people in these decisions.
Yep. I'd agree with a lot of the points that have been made. And, one of the benefits we have in our business is that we have an actual human in the middle of the process, with the stylist being the last mile of selection for the customer. And so, in some instances, the stylist is overriding what the algorithm is recommending because of some qualitative feedback that the stylist or the client might have left. So they might have said, I have a wedding coming up and I need you to send me a couple of dresses. Now, an algorithm isn't going to be great at processing that, and that's where a human can override the recommendations. And so we're always we have that human piece, which is, seeking to constantly train and retrain algorithms, based on some of these other factors that may be at play. So that's one of the ways that we overcome it, is always having humans involved in the selection process as well.
Okay,
it's a wonderful question. We see this in action. So let's imagine a brand, who has a data of past data, and let's say that they have not made a particular tone of red, right? Now, when they are making a new decision on a product, you're making a new color, which you've never made. How do you take the decision? Because the data, the model does not have data for which you are now taking a decision, right? Now, I agree with KK. I think one way to look at this problem is an explore-exploit problem. I would call it in generic terms. Now, I think most of the AI algorithms are all fed by data. Therefore, the data bias gets into the outcome. So one way to minimize the data bias is to enrich the data and increase the diversity of the data. Right now, how do you do that? For example, let's say if a brand has only limited data, what we do is we enrich with all the related markets. It need not be even fashion, right? Now, the question is, we can bring alternate data. How do you bring alternate data into the model so that the model is getting richer and richer? Now, I think it's a topic we can keep on discussing, but the question is, bring diversity. I really like Simon's point of view in terms of how can human bring that value? I think in the context of AI, this is where human can make a huge difference, right? Now, we need to bring in that diversity into what we are training these models with. I would call, all of us to be AI trainers. Now, let these be trained by us, right? Therefore, we are controlling them, and we give that diversity, we give those distinct point of view to explore, the outcomes. Yeah, wonderful points. I really enjoyed all the point of view here.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff. And I mean, one of the questions is maintaining a human touch important to your business? I mean, of course it must be, right? So if so, how do you complement creativity and emotion with artificial intelligence instead of undermining it? I don't know who would like to come in on that, because I think it's a really, really interesting question as well. So how do you complement creativity and emotion with AI instead of undermining it?
I can jump in there and take lead on that. I mean, it's central to everything that we do. And we think about our use of AI as art and science in every function in the company. And it's focused on what do machines do best and what do humans do best is kind of the question that we fundamentally ask ourselves. And so where there's typically emotion involved or relationships with clients involved, that's where humans tend to be better. And so, one of the biggest areas is, we don't want a stylist selecting from 20 to 40,000 styles for a client. We want them selecting from a much more curated set. But, they're really playing that last mile of taking the natural language, which machines still aren't great at today, and curating that final experience, for the customer. But it's also, in our buying process, we have algorithms that make recommendations, but we still have a human oversight of that, because there are factors that the stylist the buyer might know about that an algorithm might not. So that leopard is going to be or animal print is going to be a big trend for the season. If that hasn't been a historical trend, an algorithm isn't going to know that or predict that necessarily based on the data that we have. It might in Ganesh's, some of the tools that Ganesh has. And so that's where you still need that human piece to provide a little bit more judgment on top of what the algorithms are already recommending.
Thanks. Mo, would you like to come in on?
Absolutely, yes. I think you raised a really exciting point there, Simon, which is the narrowing down of options from 40,000 to a more focused set. We have been experimenting with this actually within engineering. So engineering is kind of, unfortunately, sometimes seen as kind of not necessarily within art, but a lot of what we do is actually to do has an artistic view to it. When you are presented with infinitely viable options, which one do you go to? And this is where the engineers, the most experienced engineers in the organization, have this feeling to say, all right, I know we should head in that direction, and that's where the answer is most likely to be. And we have been experimenting with a concept called generative design, where basically the engineer is designing the problem rather than the solution, and then an AI algorithm experiments with millions and millions of different designs and coming up with the most the most optimized one. And what you typically see within these designs, if you were just to Google this, you will see a lot of 3D models or shape that come out of this AI that looks very exciting, very natural. They're not like sharp edges and corners, and they actually perform far better, in terms of optimizing for weight or cost or manufacturing time. And this is an exciting area for us. And yeah, generative design have been used in generating art before, and we are now looking at how do we make use of it within the engineering space.
I think that's fascinating. It'd be interesting to know if people have been using generative design in fashion. I don't know if KK or Ganesh or anyone knows about that. Ganesh?
Yeah, in fact, we are just getting into the market. This is I would say, an area where the creativity is of the highest order, and we also wanted to be very careful in terms of, how do we find a use case for AI in the creative space. So the approach we have taken with Imagine, which you all have seen, is how do we help the designers basically get a short list of ideas which they can actually go to market very fast with. So it's not about replacing anything, it's about augmenting a creator's ability to come out with designs much faster, right? And also get a visual perception of the demand, right? We can actually give a concoction of attribute and say, please make designs using these attributes, where there are millions of interpretations of those. Instead, we are giving visual cues. Now, Imagine his job is to come out with a lot of visual cues, which creative people could use to take it forward. And also it could be used for testing, prototype testing, put it out in the market and get a feedback in various ways that we could look at exploring this. Early stages.
KK, could you come in on this? I guess there's a few things here, from human touch to generative design.
Yeah, I think our customers, so we own, one of the things I didn't mention is we own some brands ourselves, some of the world's most interesting newer brands.
I think KK might
part of our company. And what our customers are looking for when they're buying these things is they're looking for that emotion. They're looking for that real creativity that comes, when you're spending a significant amount on purchasing something of really high quality. It's not just the product, it's what it makes you feel. And that feeling today is not possible to be generated by AI. At least I haven't seen it yet. So we find that in our higher end brands, it's mostly humans who are actually coming up with what that should points that everybody else made. Selecting some of those things and reducing the amount that the human has to see. That, yes, absolutely. We can do that with AI. But when it comes to actually doing that creative part where that emotion gets involved, so far we're not there yet. It's humans, and it's not just humans. These are humans who've really been doing this for a while and really understand the customers and how this slight change in that product is going to make their customers feel. And that part, AI isn't there yet, I don't think.
I wonder if we want to get there, do we? I don't know, Erik, what do you think? Or KK, what do you think? Do we want to get there?
For me, I think we do want to get there. I think the unleashing of creativity is the most exciting thing. To draw a clear example is just, I'm an old guy, so we've been working in 3D printing for years and years. And early on in the engineering realm, we used 3D prints to recreate the things that we were eventually going to manufacture, so we could get a prototype and those type of things. And just like Mo said, the generative design of what you can create in more organic shapes and those type of things, it's a big unleash. And when I get real excited when I think about like the engineering problems it's solving, which there's great examples from brackets and airplanes and all these type of things. But when you look at what it can do in the fashion industry, it's unlimited. So you have to walk that fine line of curating what you want to look at, but then being able to give the designers a spark, because sometimes I remember the first time we 3D printed a shoe. And the organic shapes we got and those type of things. And it really created or made me think of the different things that we could do with this. So we've used that generated design in the test phase, which I think Mo brought up, or maybe it's Ganesh, but we're able to 3D print a shoe that actually is 100% same weight, feel, cushion, to the final product. So now how we take that to let our designers explore more creative solutions, that's the most exciting thing that I see with AI.
For sure. Brilliant.
I'll actually take a contrarian.
Go on.
A contrarian view to it. It's no fun when we all agree, right? So I'd say actually I don't want us to get there, and I'm actually afraid of getting there at some point because humans, maybe I've watched too many science fiction movies, but I want humans to have that edge in what we create. And I want us to be able to actually add, what is art otherwise? If computers can generate the same thing, then will it actually create that feeling inside us and our customers? Where I do agree with what Erik is saying is when, for instance, if we can get these chatbots to correct. So when, I lived in Silicon Valley for 20 years, and then I moved to Berlin for a couple, and I just moved to London a few months ago. And I moved into this place, and, obviously the people that I talk to on the phone to get my internet fixed don't know that, I'm an engineer with 30 years of experience, been building telco stuff for a long time, and I know exactly what I'm doing when I'm testing these things. I'm on the chatbot or even on the phone talking to customer service. And the customer service person just follows a path, tries to follow, go through this thing, and they will escalate it after that. What I would love is for a chatbot that really was multimodal, really understood as soon as I typed a few things in, they know, okay, this is not a person who is just, playing around with this thing. He knows what he's doing, and he's obviously done X, Y, and Z. Understand it, and then immediately get me to that next level and give me the real support that I need. That level of intelligence isn't there yet, but that would really help if we had, for customer service, for instance, really solve my problem. I don't have time, don't waste my life. get me to the answer right away.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's a really nice thing to ask the rest of the panelists as well. What would be your dream use of AI for the future that isn't happening right now or isn't plausible in the next 6 months? So where would you really, really want to get it to? I'm choosing who to go for first here. Who's gonna get the short straw? What about you, Ganesh? I will ask you to explain maybe what your dream use of AI would be.
Yeah, let me get out of my business, etc. Let me just talk generally. I was just going through an interesting reading on, GDP is not a measure of well-being. We've all been measuring something which is called capitalistic point of view. So real well-being is about when sustainable development of the world, right? How do we use all of this cutting-edge technology to really improve the real well-being and satisfaction of human, which is happiness, right? And I would like to see, for me, the dream is that all the technology is going to non-trivial problems, which are fundamental to core existence, eliminating poverty, getting into well-being, right? And making a planet which is sustainable. I would put that on top priority.
Brilliant. Mo, what about you? What would be your dream scenario? I mean, it's pretty hard to beat saving the planet that Ganesh puts down, but how might your dream use of AI go?
I have a more specific one. So just some background. So in math, so for anyone who has a PhD in mathematics, there's a family tree where basically your supervisor is considered as your parent, and then his supervisor or her supervisor is considered the grandparent. So if I go back 6 generations away, Ludwig Boltzmann, who is one of the founders of fluid mechanics, is basically my great grandparent in mathematics. And he started a field of fluid mechanics, which remains unsolved till today. It's actually one of the longest, or it's probably the longest standing mathematical problem that remains unsolved in the world of engineering and mathematics. And I see AI being an enabler that would someday hopefully help us uncover or have a better understanding of how the nature of physics and life happens in this world. So I see AI as a way to help us understand that better.
Thanks, Mo. That's really good. Simon, I'm going to come to you next.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting for me is in the wearable tech space and the connection to like medical outcomes and being able to just monitor everything that's happening with somebody and using AI to essentially flag issues, before you might, go to an emergency room or go to a doctor yourself. And so I think it's just that ongoing evolution of wearable tech and the interface, with algorithms and AI to how it can make us all healthier and safer and, better predict, issues before they come up. So that's where I would hope it goes.
Fantastic. Erik, last but not least, what do you reckon?
Well, that's hard to follow there. I mean, we have great, brilliant ideas, and I'm aligned with all those. I think for me, if I wanted to solve all those problems, it's all about engaging your employees. So if we use these as tools, that age-old thing is it's going to remove jobs. I think it's going to enhance jobs. And if we can make employees more engaged and be a little bit smarter and a little bit more creative, then the problems like health, fluid dynamics, and the sustainability, I think, will be easily resolved with more engaged employees.
It's fantastic. So I guess the greatest challenge with AI is humans then in that case. On that, KK, what would be your maybe final thoughts with regards to the use of AI now and in the future?
I think we are at a very, very good place right now. We are lucky actually to be part of this revolution, because what has happened so far is just the fundamentals. What's going to happen, Erik, your point was actually right. We are going to get there at some point, regardless of whether we should or shouldn't. And I think we are at such a nice place today that if we all do the right things today, we will probably solve the questions, the comments that Ganesh made and Simon made and all of us made. We will get there for sure. The important thing for us is, A, how can we help each other get there? If you're, think of it as co-opetition in some ways, maybe. But as a wise man said, if I have seen far, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants. We are in that lucky situation that we have the giants here now, and we can all work together to really take AI to where it can get to for the good of all of us, our businesses, as well as humankind. So I think there's a lot going to happen. We're lucky to be in this spot. Let's take advantage of it.
Thanks, KK. Brilliant. Mo, over to you. Some final words?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's been really exciting to hear about what others are doing in the AI space within other industries. I had lots of lots of thoughts, lots of kind of good questions were raised from this session that I look forward to discussing with my colleagues in Rolls-Royce internally. So yeah, and as KK said, the future looks really exciting. So I'll be looking forward to hear more about what's happening within the fashion industry in the AI space.
For sure. Well, yeah, we'd like to thank you as well for coming and sharing your experiences and thoughts from outside the industry. It's always really useful to get that. Simon, what would be your sort of last comments on this topic?
Yeah, again, thank you, for having me on the panel, and for everybody on the panel's really interesting discussion, and a lot of good takeaways, I think, for applications in our business. But I agree with KK. I think we're at a very interesting point in the evolution of AI and what's to come in the future. So many exciting applications in industries where we're just scratching the surface of it, and I'm just very excited personally for the future of what it's going to bring and how much better it will make our lives and humankind.
For sure. Erik, if you would as well.
Yeah, I love KK's point. I think that if we all work together, this thing becomes more powerful. And I think it's not always all about the competition, because there's things that we can do to make a more sustainable ecosystem within the industry, and then learning across industries that are so valuable. And that's what makes events like this so great. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate your participation as well. Ganesh, if you would close us out, what are your final thoughts?
I think fantastic learning from all the panelists here. I have more points noted down than how much I've shared. Thanks to each one of you. And the point here is, I think this is the time for collaboration. I completely agree with everybody. This is the time for collaboration, participation. I just want to leave, somebody, I've been in the industry for a while, and one of the CEOs told me that, I'm a brand, my competition, both of us have a same store, a store in the same high street. He makes an LO, I make an LO. It doesn't sell well, and we don't share our data. Now, point is, I think this is the time for sharing. This is the time for benefiting everybody with a collective wisdom. And I really concur with all the point of view towards the end of this session. And thank you for the opportunity.